Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hicks, in your testimony, you highlight that there are more than 500 independent rail contracting companies in the United States who perform $10 billion worth of rail infrastructure construction and maintaining work annually. And my question, Mr. Hicks, is can you highlight the work that your companies do and how it impacts the broader rail industry?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question, Congressman Burlison. NRC represents engineers, consultants, railroad contractors, railroad suppliers that are from all 50 states, all over the country. They help to build, implement, and maintain all these projects nationwide, both on freight and passenger service. So there are multiple companies out there in all of the districts that are performing these services of supplying and building these projects nationwide. So it contributes to hundreds of thousands of jobs in the implementation and construction of the projects and maintenance of them.
Especially under the Biden administration, is the implementation of strict federal regulations, has that made it more difficult?
There has been some difficulties when we've discussed NEPA delays and things of that nature here that definitely have made the cost of the projects increase because time is money, and the longer it takes, the more expensive things get.
Okay. And do you have any suggestions for how we can approach those?
I definitely believe that either through a combination of things of NEPA simplification, or maybe assignment to states, or maybe expansion of categorical exemptions for common sense types of projects would make a lot of sense in reducing the delays, and just consistent management of the projects in FRA also helps with just consistency, keeping them moving.
Thank you. Mr. Dietrich, in your testimony, you kind of went through the differences between the discretionary grants and the ones that have flexibility. Specifically, you mentioned that historically federal funding for construction projects is not obligated until NEPA clearance is achieved, citing that this generally does not pose an issue for traditional federal formula funds granted to states because they have the flexibility to adjust their budgets to match the project schedules. However, for the projects that are specific discretionary grants, it's a different story. Can you elaborate on that? Because I'm not familiar with how this works whatsoever.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Congressman, thank you for the question. So for when we get formula funds, we get the allocation to the states, and as projects come in, we slot the money in as the projects are ready. So NEPA, planning, detailed design, whatever, through the project development process. And that money is just slotted in. So if a project falls behind, then that money would go to a different project. Where with a discretionary grant, the money is project specific. So if we're following that obligation process, so say the FRA obligates money for preliminary engineering and NEPA, but there's a problem, and NEPA takes longer than anticipated. So the rest of that construction funding is unobligated. And then it's only when we're done with NEPA that we go back, renegotiate the agreements, sign more agreements with the FRA for the next step and the next step and the next step. And what I'm asking for is if there's a possibility for the FRA to look at that obligation process. So when they obligate the funds, they obligate the funds for the entire life cycle of the project. And that allows us, the money is obligated, there's certainty there. We don't have to keep going back for amendments, different agreements, but rather you just go through the natural progression of the project. Because as I pointed in my testimony, what it is it's worst case scenario. We're advancing projects with the hope of the money being there, and likewise, the FRA looks like they're sitting on a bunch of money not being used, when actually it's all committed. So if there's just some way to match that obligation to the project commitments, I think it would help everybody.
Okay, and I wanted to get one last question in with my time. Ms. Bevel, you said that there's approximately 350, you didn't say this, but I know that there's about 315 miles of track of short line rail in my district. And given the difficulties and the obstacles with grants, can you shed some light on how difficult that is for short line or the smaller businesses?
Sure, sure. It can be challenging as a small business to plan out work that needs to be done on your short line with the timelines that these grants take. So if I'm planning a project for 5 years from now, that's not going to take care of my needs that I have right now for new ties and rail and crossings on my short line railroad. So anything we can do to speed up the process of receiving this funding would be helpful to short lines.
Thank you. I yield back.
Okay, Mr. Moulton, you're recognized for 5 minutes.